Poda people. How is everybody this evening? Fantastic to see you on the YouTube stream and maybe, just maybe, Facebook. We're trying something new for the first time here. And if it doesn't work, don't let me know because there's nothing I can do about it. I am Matt, N3 NWV of Poda Video Training and Disasters fame. And tonight we have what I hope is the first of many live streams here on the Poda YouTube channel where we can get some faces that are more productive and better looking than mine in front of you to help answer your questions and just let you know what is going on with Parks on the Air. So if you will please help me welcome James and Jeremy. Good evening, gentlemen. How are y'all today?
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Matt. I'm doing well. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing good. Nothing to cry
You
about.
made it, right? That's
Yep.
that's the first plus, right? You managed to hit the right push to talk button, and here you are. So, well, thank you very much for joining me. I need to say that before we get into it, and you realize just how far off the rails these kinds of things can go. Hopefully, you're up for the ride. For those who probably, don't know you guys, maybe have seen you around or heard your name or something, let's just do a couple of introductions and maybe tell the story of how you got involved in the Parks on the Air organization and what your current role is. So I don't know. I can't even, you're both J names. I got to go to the second letter to go alphabetically, and I'm not sure I'm smart enough to do that. But James, I think you're up if we do it that way.
All right. I got involved. I mean, I ran across Poda, on the air. That's how I found out about the program a couple of years ago. And then there were some discussions about some development work to be done, and I reached out and volunteered. And a lot of people volunteered, so they didn't. The powers that be didn't get to me right away. So it took a few months of chase them, say, hey, I really, really want to help, and they finally said, well, if you're sure, and I've just been doing what I can to help out, and unfortunately, a lot of that's come recently as Vance stepped away, trying to help the team pick up some of that load he was doing. I won't say everything because that would belittle the rest of the volunteers, but he was doing a lot behind the scenes with reporting and awards and things. So I'm just trying to help everybody pick that up and keep marching forward.
Fantastic. And what would you say is your focus right now? Where do you spend most of your time?
Right now, I'm split getting new awards. A lot of people have already earned awards that don't actually exist yet. So we're trying to get that backlog cut up, and also improving the awards and stats pages. And the other thing that's in the back pocket, which we'll talk about in a little while, is beta for the map to improve the map that everybody loves to crank on.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, we definitely got some questions pre-submitted about the map. And my expectation is now that you've opened that can of worms, we're going to hear about it in the chat as well, too. So fantastic. Thanks, James. How about you, Jeremy? Welcome to the party.
Yeah, thank you. So let's see. How did I get involved with Poda? I met several of the individuals during the National Parks on the Air program in 2016. And I activated quite a bit towards the end, and I sort of needed a break. And so I was not very active in 2017, but remained friends with a lot of folks, and got in touch with Tom, W8TAM. And he kept kind of poking my shoulder, and he said something to the effect of, hey, we do our stuff in AWS. Are you sure? Are you sure you're not interested? Do you want to come help? And that was one of the big things that kind of pulled me in, getting to work with new technologies, and kind of seeing where we were at and how we wanted to grow, to be able to expand to a lot of different areas. So I joined the team back in early 2018. So it's been a minute that I've been around.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty close to the beginning, actually.
Pretty close, pretty close. Not the very beginning. We got a few long timers that of course have beat me, but definitely have seen the growth. Part of it too is seeing the progression that we've gone through in definitely more people working in parks and being able to hunt parks, improvements to the mapping, like you mentioned, James, that we started and we've continued to grow. Those are just cool things that I love about this program.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All righty. Well, I guess to that end, our goal here is to answer some questions, and we got a bunch of them ahead of time from primarily the Facebook group. Thank you so much for the folks who participate over there. And we also will be taking them through the comments here, assuming that I can multitask well enough to see the comments. If you have a question and you want to drop it in the comments, please put the word question as the first word in your comment. That'll highlight it, which is not a guarantee I'm going to see it, but can't hurt. One of the things we were talking about in the green room, how appropriate for Poda, is that there has already been a lot of change. So yeah, for sure, we're going to talk about futures because that's what everybody wants to know. But with the growth of Poda being so rapid, exponential, I think is the word I used before, there's probably a lot of people who aren't necessarily aware of how much work has been done, even just in the last year or two. So do you guys want to take 30 seconds and just sort of go over some of the highlights of what have been the big changes that the dev team has already pushed and implemented since, I don't know, 2019, 20, recent memory as things go?
I would say I think the biggest thing for the program has been able for activators to upload logs themselves, to be able to and that was something that we identified for a long time. It took several volunteers, a whole team of volunteers, to kind of help be liaisons and to handle that. And being able to kind of open that up with some new technology, I think has been one of the big things.
Yeah, I would agree. That is something that I've been on a couple of streams over the past few years talking about Poda. And prior to the release of the log upload, it was the number one thing I got asked about. Are we ever going to be able to upload our own logs? When is the self-upload coming? Hey, why don't you have self-upload? And then the day it went live, it started to, we love self-upload. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Thank you so much. So it certainly has gotten a lot of attention. What were the biggest challenges in that? I suppose there's the ever-present human factor of you could put anything in an ADI file, whether you're supposed to or not.
Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges. We have a seat at the table with other folks with the ADIF group, so we can help kind of shape the standard that helps us along with other groups in amateur radio. That's one of the big things. Some of the other challenges is just sort of parsing and having to deal with the data, and also trying to figure out, we kind of talk about those partial call sign, partial stuff. How do you deal with, well, I gave you data, but it's the wrong data, or things don't match up. And then how do we present those issues and those errors to the user so that they know what to correct without, like we had before, a human emailing them back saying this didn't work and this is why.
Right. So along those lines, I guess there are still some changes coming to the log upload thing. I mean, if nothing else, we now have Poda as part of the ADI spec. So at some point, I suppose we'll probably want to support that.
That's true. I'll talk about that a little bit. So we did have approval for Poda Ref and My Poda Ref tags. And according to the spec, and we'll put out an announcement when we're ready for folks to start using them. But the idea is, especially for an activation that you're in multiple parks, like an NFR as we call them, you will then have the ability to add all of those parks as well as the state or the location, instead of filling out the form on the website. Adding
Nifty.
this into the spec allows all the content that we need to be able to process a log for that to be in the log. And this opens up another opportunity. When we're ready coming down the road, it's a wish list item right now, but what we want to have happen is to then allow log developers to support taking in those logs directly from the application.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be slick. Obviously there are lots of logging programs out there, but there's a select few that probably represent the majority of the logs that we get. And if even just a couple of them would set up click here, right, to upload to Poda,
Absolutely.
I think that would be one more thumbs up for electronic logging. So I don't know, James, is this part of your bailiwick, or are you in other areas on the front end, and you want to save them for your demo?
No, I'm not one of the guys working on the log uploader. Some of the other team members jumped on that.
Sure. Well, that actually brings up a good point. How many people are on the team at this point?
Seven now,
So
Jeremy?
I'm actually counting 10 devs that are part of our group. I guess actually 11 if you count me, which I probably should here. But can I give them a quick shout out here? Just they're not on the screen.
Yeah, 100%. And for the record, no, they don't let me count myself at work. So
yeah, so we've had a couple people join the team recently. Zach, KO4WPO, Seth, N4SBX, Bo, N7 YHF, Jake, KG5DRT, are some of the new folks within the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now that have joined, and we're kind of getting up to speed on where everything is. We've had some contributors here a little bit longer back. Gary, KI5GRD, as well as John, KD5YRN, who have helped out in some other areas like APRS and betaing our SMS spotting that's still in alpha. We're still doing some testing on that. And then I would be remiss to not mention some of the veterans here of the Poda dev team. Mike, W8MSC, Tom, of course, W8TAM, Colby, WR5B, and well, James, of course, you're on the call with me or with us. But this is a big project. We do a lot of stuff, and we've got a lot of folks.
Yeah, and the coordination of the whole thing is, I don't know. We're going to talk policy and staff in another live stream somewhere. But as the organization has grown, the number of people it takes to run it has grown, and so the folks who do all the coordination and just keep the bits and folks moving where they need to be, it's can't be understated what a challenge that really is. So
absolutely.
Okay, cool. There were those logs, once they get in there, turn into stats. And there were a few minor tweaks, right, to the stats and awards of late. Is that something you want to talk about? You guys are grinning like, no, I'm not touching that with an 80-foot pole.
Are you wanting to talk about the ones a few months ago or the more recent ones?
Well, whatever. It's dealer's choice. Dealer's choice. That's the beauty of live. You get to pick, and I can't do anything about it. There's no editing.
I'll let Jeremy take the one from 6 months ago because I just don't want to open that can of worms. But yeah, we're looking at it and trying to make a lot. Well, not a lot, but some of the initial rules were very North America centric because that's where Poda came out of in Poda. So over time, as we've been growing into other countries, Jason's really been pushing to find people in other countries and leaders to help bring more of the globe in, and it's we're moving around pretty well now. So we've had to just review some of the awards and some of the ways we're looking at the stats to make it more global.
Sure.
And the can of worms I won't open. I'll just mention it. The whole late shift, early shift thing.
Yeah.
It gets a little confusing. It got a little more complex. But I think most people have finally gotten a grasp on that.
Sure.
Basically, just let the system figure it out for you. Like it's just a ticker for you. It's not like it's prize money or anything that you're worried about, right? So
right. Well,
that's one of the big things that took a lot of discussion and it took a lot of math to figure that one out too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that is probably as good of evidence as there is anywhere for how much of the growth of Poda has been international. That you wouldn't think that the definitions of late shift and early shift would resonate with so many people. But when those people live in time zones that are, it's 8 a.m. for them right now, then yeah, it's sort of clearly left room for some tweaking.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Japan is my favorite there, where 0 UTC is 9 a.m. And so by definition, almost everything was the old concept of late shift. So we definitely wanted to address that in some way so that it was late for everybody. And
yeah,
I think we've kind of gotten past that point, which is a good thing. We still have a lot of cool awards. We still have some more, things, and we have a lot of cool awards coming up too. So some stuff in the pipeline.
I think we're going to end up doing an entire stream where, obviously, if you guys want to come back, you're more than welcome. But we'll drag Jason over here and maybe some folks from the help desk and do a deep dive on awards and plans for awards and how they really work and things like that. Although I guess there was one other sort of major change that involved some back end work, and that was the switch from radar to Rover.
Yeah, that one, I'll take the blame for it.
Credit. It's credit.
Yeah.
When you're a volunteer, it's always credit.
No, I'll reserve the right to use the word blame because I didn't do any of the hard work to implement it. Vance actually did that. But I started asking, why are these so tiny? Can we have bigger? And part of it was that Radar, in fact, I think his website's actually shut down now, but Radar was, it was out of South Africa, I believe.
Yeah, it was. That's something a lot of people don't know, that we didn't really make that up.
We didn't. We kind of borrowed from it, integrated it, and there was some conversations there. But that's kind of phased out. And like I said, that website's not even active anymore. So we were looking for a way to do the same kind of award, but with data we already had. So that you didn't have to go and enter, because anybody who did the old radar system, you had to go in and put all your data in and figure out how far you travel from one part to another. It was a lot of extra work. So we wanted to find a way that we could just automate like the rest of our awards. So people could just get it. You could just go to, 5 parks and you would get a warthog, and no extra data entry and stuff. So that's kind of been our motif about awards. Whenever people have a suggestion for a new one, it's like, do we have the data? Is it something that, has a wide appeal, and is it something we can automate? Because obviously we don't want somebody to have to sit there and say, oh, did that person really get that award? Check. Okay, issue that. So we still have a few that are manual, mostly because we haven't gotten to them in the queue, but we're trying to, because like you said at the beginning of the stream, there's a lot of volunteers, and quite frankly, the development team is the smaller group compared to like the park managers and the country admins and stuff. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, right at a minimum, the entity managers, there's one for every entity we're in and such things. And so yeah, the dev team, the help desk team, the media team, we we do what we can, but there is definitely a backlog of stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think too, the more we implement and the more people love the program, the more awesome creative ideas flow from that. So it's kind of like the more we accomplish, the more there is for us to continue working on.
Yeah. And like any software project, it's been around long enough that, there's always some technical debt. There's growing pains and, things we didn't quite do the best way it could be done now, but we did it the best way we could when we did it 2 years ago. So while we're adding new things, we're also trying to go back and improve and keep the app, timely. And so that's always a challenge. It's a challenge for every software developer. It's no different for this project. So, regularly Jeremy and Colby and I, for example, will have a conversation about, do we really want to fix that bug and maybe find the whole nest of spiders in that, or just move on for right now?
And again, not to not to open up the door on the washing machine here, right? But one of the things that I personally love about the automation work that you all are doing is that every time you go through one of these exercises, you rework some awards, you all the log upload stuff, the data in the database gets better. We get higher quality data, we get better organized data, we get easier to consume data. So if you're a guy like me who's trying to do quarterly stats updates or figure out what happened with a plaque event, all of that work that goes into the database that probably nobody out in the field sees, but it makes a lot of the things that they do want to see easier, better, faster, more reliable. It's all really important work. But so thank you for doing that. Okay, so while we're talking to you, James, you had a topic on here about future wish list stuff for. Well, you have it listed under view, which there's probably 3 people watching the stream who know what view is, but maybe you want to just go ahead and elaborate on that.
I listed under view.
I actually added
somebody
that.
Listed it under view.
Yeah, I can talk through that.
Just tell me which topic it is. You don't have to be coy about it.
So I can speak through that. So a couple of our newer devs are working on a project to upgrade our platform. Our web interface is I don't want to say old, but it's on a version that's a little bit behind. So we're working on upgrading that. And I actually did the last one a couple of years ago, and there was some work involved because they changed the name of the widgets from this type of table to that type of table, or a button to something else. And so you got to go in tediously almost to everything and check all the errors and get everything fixed up. But the primary goal then, after we get that upgraded on the front end perspective, is to work on internationalization, or I-18N, if you see that abbreviated. One of the how do I want to say it? One of the hindrances worldwide for Poda acceptance is not everyone reads and understands English, and so we are, working to get those strings turned into local languages, recruiting folks in local languages to be able to have all those items in their native language.
Cool. Very cool. And congratulations, Julie, on your Rover award there. Always a good time. Well, so that I have spent some time working for a software company, like the last 30 years. Localization is a humongous effort. So is that something mean, I guess we wouldn't undertake this if we didn't think we had the resources or the staff or whatever else. But where do we sit in terms of feeling like we're really ready to tackle a thing like that?
So status on that. We did start the effort. I want to say it was about 2 years ago at this point, when it became apparent that the pain of the ADIF uploading was more important to resolve first, because Poda has been growing basically exponentially. Every year we've been doubling the number of stuff, and so we got to the point where we thought, okay, we got to drop everything and fix this pain point for our excellent volunteers. So we started that effort, and then now looking at the versions of the software, it makes more sense to go ahead and upgrade them first, so that then we put in the effort to then define all the strings, and kind of give context for what each of those strings mean. And then we can turn those over to folks who are fluent in both languages to help us fill that in. The last thing we want to do is like go to Google Translate and try to guess.
Yeah.
That would not be good.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't have the option of going with IKEA assembly style instructions where everything can be just that guy in all sorts of positions where he's fallen on a screwdriver or whatever else. It's a little more complicated than that. So good deal. Well, I think that's going to be incredibly useful. Just for some context, this is my current favorite stat about Poda. If you go and look in the database, there's 36,000, somewhere in that ballpark, accounts for Parks on the Air. If you go and look in the QSO database, there are over 350,000 unique call signs in that QSO database. So we only have 10% of the people who have already participated in Poda signed up. And I got to think that internationalization is going to be a great way to reach out to some of those other folks and make it a little more approachable for them. So fantastic.
Yeah, it's great seeing the random post on Facebook. Somebody new, a new user to Poda, they log in and say, "Oh my God, I already have 4 awards."
Yeah.
Because if you hunt a park, that stat goes in there whether you're a user or not. So when you sign up, they pop up for you, and I think it kind of, a lot of people, it gets them excited. They're like, "Oh, it's, I've already got candy. I can, because part of what makes Poda great is, we're a gamified society these days. Everything has some kind of achievement or some kind of tracker.
Sure.
Or, tons of people wear Fitbits, and it buzzes you and says, "Oh, you haven't walked enough. Go, get up out of your chair and go walk 10 steps." So that's kind of the society we are now. So Poda really is just a reflection of that, and it can be, if you don't get too crazy about it, competitive, it can be motivating to go out and say, hey, I just need, like, I went out last weekend, I needed 10 more parks to get a new award, and I said, hey, there's 14 I can get.
That is exactly the point. I tell everybody these things are supposed to be motivational for people to not only maintain their participation but try new things. But I'll tell you what, whoever's idea it was to put that gauge, that green gauge on the progress page, oh man, every time I see that little sliver of white on one of those green circles, that immediately becomes the thing I must do. I don't know why. I gotta finish those circles. So it works. It works on me anyway. Works on me. Okay. So where do you want to? So we're on the website at this point. We're on the Poda.app site, which in and of itself, not to go back too far, but it wasn't around in the beginnings of the program. Everything you see on Poda.app is, in the grand scheme of Poda, a relatively recent development. So for those of you trying to gauge the size of the bread box, how much work has done, everything you see is relatively recent. So
quick story on that. So in the early days of Parks on the Air, when we had stats and we had sort of the old page. We made a transition to this API based web application, if you will, and it all started with spotting. That was the first thing that was on the old Poda.us site that we had, and so one of the big key features of that was opening up the ability for other devices and applications to be able to interact with Poda. And so it's been a while, but there is a Alexa skill that we had at one point in time that would read you off the spots. And back in the days when there were 5 spots, I think it was great. Now I'm like, okay, we got to go back and rework that because it'll keep talking to you for 30 minutes.
I want to hear Alexa try to pronounce some of those park names.
Well, for starters, especially on a Support Your Perks weekend or something, you're going to need more than one Alexa to get them to get them all announced. That's been one of the fabulous things for those of you who don't follow the Slack channels. There's generally a screenshot in there about once a week. Somebody happens to notice that on the spotting page there were it's an absurd number of spots, and that a lot of those spots have what we here in the US would consider DX call signs, European call sign, region 1, region 3 call signs. And to me, that's the thing really that's going to push the program to continue to grow at the rate it's been growing internationally. When you start getting a few activators in places where everybody can get at them, you don't have to have a setup that's capable of working trans-Pacific to talk to activators in the US. You could talk to folks in your own country. I think that's when a lot more people are going to go, oh, hey, this is for me too. And you mentioned something, Jeremy, about integration with the Poda. You were talking specifically about Alexa, but I know we get a lot of questions about, hey, I would like to be able to get at spots through thing X, through my browser plugin, through my DX cluster client, or whatever else. What do we have in the way of plans for, okay, well, we know a lot of people are interested in Poda data, and we probably don't want to be the Twitter fire hose, but we could do something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take a couple steps back, and our growth as Poda, and especially the Poda.app website, it uses an API to call information about people, so that you get personalized information, as opposed to the websites that render all the details and then give you the output to display on your screen. A couple different types of philosophies there, but we've chosen the API route. As we've grown, we just added in new API calls as we needed them. And so there was, I don't want to say a lack of organization, but there was some steps taken where we really didn't want to publish that to say, hey, here's how you use it, because we wanted to clean it up and have it conform more to a standard. So what we currently have, I've sort of been calling informally version 0 as it's grown. And so we are working on rewriting the entire thing, and we're calling that version 1 or V1. And so that is going to be published. We'll have documentation for those people that want to interact with Poda. So application keys and stuff for people who write applications, users who want to get at data for displaying spots or displaying their information. So the best place, what I will tell anyone, the best place to get updates on our progress is in Discord. We have a Poda Poda API public, Poda public API, one of those two. There's a channel in there. That's the best place. I've been trying to corral people there, and then that's where we'll send updates.
Right. So, Curtis, join the Discord server and find the API channel, because I promised these guys I wasn't going to make them answer date questions on the live stream since it's being recorded. But yeah,
I
that's
get
where the
paid to
info
do this for my
is.
day job, and I don't give them dates, so I'm definitely not doing it for volunteer thing.
I don't. Yeah, I don't want to promise any dates because we've got stuff, and of course, all of us are volunteers. I've got a 3D printer that just arrived minutes before our live stream started. I mean, we've all got stuff. Yeah.
I know this has the potential to be a huge tangent, but is this your first 3D printer?
No, it's not.
Okay,
It's,
then you already know that this is
guy.
not a tool. This is another hobby. Okay, I got you. I got you. Good deal. Okay, so the API has the potential to facilitate a whole lot of integrations with, logging programs, or I want to see my spots over here, or I want to do my own mapping in Power BI or whatever it is. So if you have interest in consuming Poda data yourself, that Discord channel is the place to be.
Yep.
I'm assuming that while we're doing this this API work, that it's not just for third parties, but it's also to support enhancements that we want to make to our own Poda.app site.
That's true.
We did get a bunch of questions from the Facebook group that I've sort of grouped into categories. They're related to Poda.app functionality. And the first sort of group of questions is in and around the filtering of spots, that everybody and their mother's brother's third cousin has a different idea of how they want to look at the spots. And so I tell folks, I say, well, we've sort of erred on the side of simple because there's 35,000 people trying to use this thing. But also, if you get too granular with your spots, you miss opportunities to talk to people that you could have talked to, but you filtered out their spot. Nevertheless, there's got to be a backlog for Poda.app. Are any changes or enhancements to the filters on that backlog or potential to make the cut? And I'll give you one example that got a bunch of upvotes. Was the addition. Right now we have a sort of a super mode, if you want to call it that, for filtering digital spots. So you can say just digital and it'll cover FT8 and PSK and whatever else. There's been a bunch of requests to say, well, can we have something similar for phone? Because now, especially now that 10 meters has all of a sudden come to life, FM is a thing. And once in a while you see AM as an activator. So are there anything in the works along those lines, or at least how does that discussion go?
Yeah. Actually, I am proud to announce that the phone category now appears on Poda.app, and it does contain AM, FM, and sideband. So if you're a phone only operator, or at least that's what your radio is set to at the moment, and you can quickly change frequencies, you can set that and you'll be able to see FM, AM, and sideband activators that are currently on.
Yeah. So, and it's important though that people understand how those things work. A lot of the filter choices are not available unless they're relevant.
Yes. So let me explain one thing on that. We take the ADIF mode category, and essentially that's what you see. And if you've ever read the ADIF spec, there are tons of modes. And if we were to display them all, it would fill up the screen. So the idea is let's only show what's currently out there. So if a station goes away and that mode goes away and you filtered on it, you're not going to have anything on your screen.
Right.
There is an idea that we may work on to enable some check boxes of different modes. But with phone and with digital, that does kind of encapsulate, a number. But we are looking into some other options.
Yeah, we could potentially say, well, phone and digital will be phone, digital, and CW could be
Yep.
persistent options. You can always pick them, even if there's not a spot for one of those modes, so you can be ready when the first one pops up.
Yep.
I have not been a big user of the filters historically, but I sort of recently joined the Long Island CW Club, and they keep beating me with the ruler and get on the air and use your CW and whatever. So I've been focusing on the CW spots. The problem is I do POTA in my sleep now, so I'm not sure it's good for. I can hunt POTA at 30 words a minute, and I can't understand the CQ my refrigerator is sending me. So what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
That's right.
I do POTA at 30 words a minute in my sleep, aka dreams. In real life, it's about 3 words a minute.
Yeah. Well, I have done 2 or 3 CW activations, real slow. I go and hide on 12 meters so that I only get one call every 5 minutes or whatever. It's terrifying, but it's like roller coaster terrifying. You're scared out of your mind, and then when you get off and go, I can't wait to do that again. So go figure.
Yeah, I didn't want that one hanging on my head. So December 30th to 31st, right before the end of the year, I just went and slogged my way through a 10 contact twofer. So, okay, now I've done CW activation. It's not hanging on my head anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it's because it's like you're talking about looking at that pie and only seeing that one little slice left. You got to go do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw this activated line. I had 0 CW. I'm like, I got to put some numbers there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And zeros no good.
Yeah. And Matt, I want to give one shout out. We were talking about the filter. We were talking about cool features that folks have implemented, kind of recently. Colby has been a major contributor to the dev team. In one sense, on the user authentication piece for Poda.app. If we didn't have that, we couldn't give anyone personalized information because we wouldn't know who you are. That was a huge linchpin to help get us forward to awards, to all the cool stuff. And the other thing is that filtering. So being able to, see stations that I can probably work a little bit better than, maybe seeing everybody. So we've got a lot of great features from a lot of our dev folks, and just want to give a shout out to him on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have to keep reminding the folks that run the YouTube channels and stuff that I talk to that I'm just the cheerleader, right? Everybody else is doing all of the work. So the more we can get their names out there and get them recognized, that is awesome. There was another question on the filter about age, right? That we have sort of basically some baked in timelines to say, well, they update this often and they go away on their own after this long and whatever else. And there was a question about, was there any discussion to say, have we looked at those numbers since we picked them? Are they the right numbers? What if somebody wanted to change them? Where does that fall into our purview?
I'll say this. In the olden days, we first had it at 2 hours. And we discovered that 2 hours might be a little too long.
Yeah.
So we dropped that down to 30 minutes. And I think now we're discovering, based on the mode, 30 minutes may be too long. If I've done a digital activation and there are other folks listening out there for me or respotting me, or I'm working people, maybe more like 5 or 10 minutes is a better number, especially for the digital or the CW modes, because we get that feedback. Sideband, I mean, if it's been 30 minutes and you haven't had a contact, you're probably not on the air anymore. But there's probably a conversation to be had on if we can configure that and allow a user to only see what's there.
Yeah, I'm guessing, and it is just a guess because you barely get any context out of a Facebook post. So if whoever posted that, if I'm getting this wrong, my apologies. But I'm guessing that it's driven largely by just the growth of the number of spots.
Yeah.
That way back in the day, there was one or two or three, especially on a weekday. There was a time in Poda where you could go to the spotting page and see nothing. I haven't seen that in at least a year, where there were literally 0 spots on the page. So
Try it about 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern time.
oh yeah,
You might get
well,
empty spots,
the
maybe.
the couple of times I have been up at those hours, there have been ZLs and Japans, and there's folks around. So I
It's
mean, maybe I just got
it's
lucky. I didn't
yeah,
get that lucky. I couldn't hear
it's
them.
hard.
So
It's hard to get it. It's hard to find an empty nowadays,
yeah,
and yeah, and it goes back to what we're saying about growing pains and some of the technical debt, and again, do we fix it? Do we rewrite it, or do we just keep adding features? You
yeah,
know, and the spotting page is a good example of that, because that's a lot of little different things that come together to give you the spotting page. You know, and
yeah,
like just a couple weeks ago, we realized, oh, the spots are kind of slow. Why is that? We realized we had something like I'm a misquote number. I think it was 12 million spots in the database. We're like, oh, we only show these for like 30 minutes. Why are we keeping, 3 years worth of spots? So we made an archive, and so now, that database only has more current data, so the results come back faster. And
sure.
it's little things like that. But yeah, we're growing, and seeing 100 spots on a weekend is
Not uncommon.
not super rare anymore.
Not
Yeah,
uncommon at
it's
all.
really fun.
Well, so it's funny because spots, and we talked earlier about log uploads, they both sort of lead into one area where there were, again, a number of questions and or comments about edits. I put a spot in there and I goofed it up. I need to change it. Or I uploaded a log and I made a mistake and I need to change it. And the process for both of those changes currently is blow it away and start over. Which obviously works, but there's a significant amount of overhead in that. Are there opportunities to make that different or better, or is it just too entangled in the way everything works together?
There certainly is. I mean, that kind of ties into one of the things we've been talking about is if an activator spots themselves, having their comment and their information that they spot with be sticky instead of being overwritten by every other spot. That kind of overlaps with some of these errors that, like when hunters respot you, I've seen people typo call signs or move the frequency by accident. Sometimes you're doing on the phone and you can fat finger it. Everybody does, right? So one of the things we've been talking about how to implement is kind of the sticky fields for the activator. And that would probably also tie into having some kind of ability to update the spot as opposed to just having to mark a QRT and start over.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you do is you mark a QRT. And the other thing is that we use in the comments, we use certain tags or keywords like QRT, or if you put a mode in there, it'll change what your spot means. And we really need to make that a little bit more targeted. So it's not, if I say, I am happy to get you, that switches the guy's spot to AM.
Yeah.
Because I said AM. So
right.
that leads to errors or misspotting. So part of it's just fat fingering, and that's never going to go away. But if we can, let's say if I spot and we can lock in where I'm the one that can change my frequency, or my initial comment stays, that'll help a lot of those issues.
Yeah, there were
like
exactly. That was the next set of sort of group of comments around spotting was, sticky spots is what I keep calling it, where you as the activator have the ability to say, no, this is the frequency I'm on. You can't change my frequency. Or I need to put a comment out there like, I was going to say up 5, but after the last DXpedition, I don't think we're going to say that. But, well, okay, here's one. When I did my CW activations, I put in the comments like, QRS slow, look out below, get a cup of coffee, whatever. This is going to take a minute. And I need that to stay there. But as soon as somebody respots me, it's gone. And the next guy that calls me at 807 words a minute. Right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of utility for that, but that that certainly relies on the authentication on the spotting
Yeah.
page, and maybe a bunch of other moving parts that I just don't know about.
Yep. We just got a comment from Enzuro HR about not reducing the 30-minute timer. And what I would say to that is, I don't expect that we'll change that 30 minutes, but we might be able to give you, for those that want it, the ability to knock that down lower and only see certain stuff. So, you would still have the ability to keep the 30 minutes and spots on there. It's just that other people, if other people, wanted to adjust it, they would be able to see that on their screen. But absolutely right. Some folks do use the spot to be able to sort of like pre-spot yourself, when you're trying to get, because of cell service or whatever. So that's definitely a useful feature as well, to get people to look for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and his comment was a little too big to totally fit on the screen here. So please don't reduce it. I am driving to a park and spot will be on in 20 minutes. And then, because he knows he's going to lose cell coverage.
Yep.
And so I think that's a whole other area. There is it Discord or Slack? I think it's a Slack channel for off-grid spotting. And that's something that I know is a work in progress, looking at, well, how do we integrate with SMS or WinLink or APRS, or use additional radio technologies beyond cell data to get the spotting a little more accessible in some of these remote locations. And that's another one where, as we go more and more international, I think we're going to run into, most of Europe probably has better cell coverage than the US does, but there are lots of places that don't.
Yes, absolutely. And the community, I will say, has developed quite a few extensive ways to be able to get a spot without using any sort of cell service, whether that's APRS, whether that is an email through WinLink, whether that is JS8 call. There are a lot of different options that have been created to kind of help support the ecosystem. Things that we want to develop sort of internally on Poda, but we just can't get to them. So we're grateful that other folks have been able to help folks as well.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to talk about some futures with no timelines that maybe the dev team doesn't have to take 100% responsibility for. I think there are things we can do in the documentation, training, social media spaces to help make people more aware of the existence of these things, as long as we have the appropriate what do I want to say? I don't want to say asterisk, but just people need to understand, well, this is core POTA stuff and this is extra POTA stuff. And the extra POTA stuff, if it's down, don't write the help desk. It'll be back. Usually when it's back, kind of thing.
Yeah. And this ties into the work Jeremy's been doing with the new version of the API, is to enable those integrations in a more standardized way, so they're more predictably able to communicate. And if we are going to do maintenance, we'll have a way to say, hey, integration XYZ, your stuff's not going to work for a little while. Real quick, before we move off, I just want to, there's a couple comments that came through about the spots.
Yeah, go for it.
Dear to my heart about spots. I often do robes, big robes, and I often do it with multiple operators. So a couple of the features that are on the to-do list are being able to spot multiple parks and multiple call signs.
That was my next question.
Yeah. So I just didn't want it to get through in the chat before it got lost. But yeah, those are all things we're talking about, how best to do that. And as Jeremy mentioned, spots, it's been rewritten, but a lot of the base logic is still based on what was on Poda.us. It is kind of the oldest functionality that we still have running that hasn't been completely replaced with Poda App. So there's some background work. So just be patient with us. All of us devs are also activators and hunters, and we share the same pain points and discomfort with the spotting. Keep the comments coming, obviously, but just remember that it's tricky and there's lots of moving parts there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think the multi-park, multi-op thing is going to be wildly popular. I know my club, the club to which I belong, it's not my club, has experienced really, really a real resurgence, a lot of growth in the last 2 years, due certainly not entirely, but not unentirely to Poda. That it gave us something that we could do as a club activity and do what people like to do, go outside and play with their toys and actually talk to people. It checks a lot of boxes. But the logistics of getting yourself on the spotting page as a club, particularly when we did the plaque event, we had 14 operators signed up to go out they weren't all out there at one time, but we had to get the /R numbers, and then inevitably somebody, oh, you can't use /R, that's a treaty, this, that, whatever. No, it's not. It's only on the POTA spotting page. It's not on air. It's not a legal thing. Don't worry about it. But yeah, doing something.
If somebody logs that /R/R1/R2, /R is okay, but when you use /R1/R2, then your logging software thinks they're in Russia.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. So if you're the activator, you've been told more than once, don't log those /R. The whole point of those /Rs is that you've got multiple people operating under the same call.
Yep.
And that same call is what should be in the logs.
And that's another one of those things that I've had at least one discussion. A couple of us have discussions about is there a way to allow the same call sign to spot multiple times?
Yeah.
And have that managed by the system and not just a random label.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to the philosophy of when we first started spotting. A lot of the use case of our activators were people like Bob N4CD, who say were CW operators who would go roving around to a bunch of different parks and would change bands quickly. And we needed a way to quickly update that information. And you look at the traditional ham radio DX cluster, and it's a table of point-in-time information. So it's as every single person who makes a spot of a station, you see all of those. And so to help cut down the noise, we did some special grouping stuff so that you would just see the last person that worked that station. And you would get all up-to-date information without having to weed through all the stuff that you already read of the same station.
Right.
So that's both a blessing and a curse when we start looking at, as a club who has 5 stations on the air at a given park, or if we have a club that goes to 5 different parks and uses the same call sign. There's some challenges there.
Yeah. Well, right. It's a club. They've got 10 people operating from 6 parks. There's some parks with 1 op, some parks with 3 ops, and they come and go throughout the course of the day. And yeah, we're going to, I think, have to get to a point where a spot is going to give you sort of the same options the ADI gives you, where you can specify the station and the operator And
Yep.
in terms of uniqueness of a spot, that we're going to have to look at station, operator, band, and mode, the same as we do for counting QSOs in the database before we say, nope, you know what, this is an existing spot. And
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's definitely a valid use case, because we're encouraging, groups of people, clubs, to get out there, and that's ham radio. That's what we're trying to do. We
yeah,
want to help make that easier for folks. It's a challenge, so we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do that.
yeah. Well, good to know it's on the backlog, because it does come up.
Yep.
It does
Yep.
come up, and you're right. We definitely, as an organization, try to encourage all sorts of activity, but club activity in particular. It seems to be the consensus of most of the volunteers that healthy clubs are healthy for ham radio, and so to the extent that POTA can support that, we'll we'll do so. We'll do so. Okay. Well, let's see. We're over an hour at this point, and we have touched on most of the questions. There's probably a couple of folks out there going, when are they going to talk about my award suggestion, or why does this award not work that way, or whatever else? That's going to be part B. We've got to drag a different crowd here to the live stream to talk policy, procedure, awards, and stuff like that. So this is going to be the first of many such interactions with the POTA volunteer team. So my apologies if I didn't frame the discussion properly and you're disappointed that we didn't answer your question. But we will get to it eventually, just not today. Not today. But is there anything else you guys want to go over, talk about?
I think we're going to talk about a upcoming feature.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh.
I think we should.
We have a cat to unsheath here, do we? Will you be talking or showing, or what do we want to do here?
Yeah, I'll be sharing here.
Okay.
A number of people have seen this, because I've been grabbing random people that I knew were going to be good use cases to test, but we have been slowly working on an upgraded map for the website. And part of that upgrade is using a different map source, a little faster, but also being able to show your own data when you're logged in, parks you parked, parks you activated, etc. So I will share the prototype that I am using for development. This one here. Ignore the colors of the markers. That hasn't been decided. So I'm using gray for just every park. This happens to be my area. I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig. So this is basically all the park locations. The current map, you see these as yellow spots. And what I'm going to do is, this is all cache data. It's not connected to the database directly. So I am just going to load data for myself. And you'll notice some wonderful colors come up. And sorry, my screen's a little undersized here because it's on my small monitor. But the legend is that gray, I have no activity personally. Red, I've activated. Green, I have hunted. And blue, I have hunted and activated. So obviously a lot of my area parks I've hunted and activated. And of course, there's a pop-up and it tells me this one I've activated twice for 164 QSOs, and I've hunted it 13 times. So the idea is that when you go to the map, if you're logged in, there's going to be a button to a layer to show your activity, which will be an overlay on the regular park data. This is a lot of people are going to have many uses for this, but the big use for me personally is in planning roads. I can look and say, oh, I have this group of parks over here I haven't done. They're pretty close together. Let me I'm gonna go spend a day and hit a bunch of parks down there. So
Sure.
and then usually I call up my local club guys and say, hey, who wants to join me? If I'm gonna burn all that gas, might as well make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So we actually just did that this last weekend, and we went down to Hamilton and did 21 references in a day, and went and had a nice dinner afterwards. And so I got to turn all of these ones blue. That's about an hour and a half for me each way. So, but yeah, so this is
Nice.
like I said, it's a prototype, and it's kind of fun. Also, I did a trip last summer. I'm going to turn off all parks, and I'm just going to go over out west really quick and zoom back in. And you'll see that I activated some parks out west. And if you actually look, you can kind of follow my trail of where I drove
Yeah.
by looking at the parks. So there's going to be some filtering built on this. That list is not decided, but some of the things that have come up is picking a date range of when you did things, or
Sure.
being able
Well,
to
and
actually, pick a.
obviously you may or may not want to see hunted and activated. You might only want to see one or the other. And
Yeah, exactly. So there will be filters, and obviously being able to pick, um, go to a park and basically zoom in and just see what's around that park, for
sure.
example. Um, so there's one of the things I'm working on here before we go live with this is you'll notice that even at a relatively close zoom, there's a lot of markers.
A lot of parks.
Yeah, a lot of parks, and that's a little heavy on your browser to load all those. So we're going to be making use of a feature called map pointer clustering. So basically, where you see all these gray ones here in New York, for example, it'll show one marker with like a number 40 on it, and that way when you zoom in, it blows them up, and that way it's loading faster, and as you zoom in, it expands those groupings.
Yeah.
Um, so that's going to help with load times and everything. But it does follow you around. It just I'm loading everything. I actually have a counter here for my own use, but this is saying there's basically 2,000 parks rendered on the map right now. So that's using a little bit of memory on your computer.
Yeah.
And doing that on the phone, obviously you're going to be a much smaller screen. But yeah, so this is the prototype. The one that you're actually going to see when it comes out, no timelines. But when it comes out on the website, will not look exactly like this. You'll have some improvements, but this is one thing we've been having a lot of conversations about, and this prototype's been floating around, and we've been getting some feedback from various people. I have actually quite a few. I had to get some people that weren't in North America to make sure that the map worked down under. Which, by the way, when I first added them, it didn't. If you scrolled one way over the date line, it didn't render, but if you went the other direction, it showed up.
Go figure.
A weird math flipping that minus sign on the longitude, but it was one
Yeah.
of the things that had me scratching my head.
Juan asked a question that I'm pretty sure the answer is you have to, right? You have to pick a call sign for
no,
this
it'll
to
be
work,
tied
right?
to your account. So so the way Poda works is all your call signs are tied to your account. So all your hunting and activating is tied to your account. It might be labeled by a call sign. Like for me, I have one in the US and one in Canada. So yes, I can say I only want to see what parks I activated N6NRD, or I only want to see things I hunted as V3JLN. We could do that, but it's tied to your account. So
spiffy.
Yeah.
Spiffy.
So
Yeah, this is going to be wildly popular. Everybody loves the map. And since we're on the topic of showing park information, like more detailed park information, the other topic that comes up from time to time is the idea of some sort of an activator wiki, or the ability for somehow people who've actually been to a park to leave some information for future activators that says, oh, if you need to talk to a ranger, make sure you look up Bob because he's the nicest guy I ever met. Or, fair warning, the driveway into the best activating spot is a 94-degree slope, or just whatever the info is.
That might be a topic you bring up in the policy live stream.
Oh, interesting.
That's anytime you have mass user input, there's got to be a conversation around. Obviously, somebody's going to write a spam bot. It's like reviews and comments, right? So
content appropriateness.
Yeah. So there's some conversation to be had there, but from a technical implementation, that's a pretty easily done thing. So it's more of a figuring out how to implement it from a policy standpoint.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I set you and Jason up there. I'm just the messenger, guys.
Well,
just the messenger.
I have just shoved it to Jason.
We actually did start that at one point in time. I think in one of the bits of code, there's sort of an alpha version of that. And so we'll probably pick it up again at some point in time. The other feature I'd like to do there is to request information from people who have activated on, points of the park. There's a big conversation around, where the point is for the park. And so that's definitely a bigger conversation to make sure you're in the park, to help you find the park, but maybe not do all the work for you on finding the boundaries. Like we don't want to be the boundary register,
right,
the place for all parks, because we can't update all of those. But making sure that at least the data we do have is of good quality to save the next activator some time.
Yeah, and that's something that comes up quite often. Actually, I'll go ahead and address it. Is Poda is not going to start having park boundaries on the map. A lot of people don't understand the amount of data that is. Our QSO database right now is about 13 million, Matt? I think you had the stats. Recently.
Yeah, 13, 14, something like that.
And that is, from a scale standpoint, that is a barely visible pinhead of data versus just having the park boundaries for Ontario or the national park boundaries in the US is like,
it's a staggering amount.
It's a staggering amount of data points to have any kind of accuracy, and it just would be like Jeremy said, administratively it's a headache, but just from the cost alone would be prohibitively expensive to store all that data. So
it's one of those things. We understand why everybody would like to have that, but it's just not technically feasible at this point, and probably not monetarily feasible either, to be perfectly honest with you. So
yeah,
very, very cool. Okay, well, I think you guys have been doing a better job than I have of watching the questions. Have you seen anything else that we got to go through over there, or?
No, Jason's helping out a lot and handling a lot of the questions. So that's I haven't had to read every single line.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate that. And thanks to all your hard work.
Definitely
keeping the bus on at least 3 wheels most of the time. So
every once in a while we get up on 2 wheels. That's exciting.
Yeah. Well, that just means we're moving, right?
That's right.
We got things moving along. Cool. Well, with that, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us over in the chat and the stream. Be curious to see whether we actually streamed anything to Facebook or not. That'll be a good little technical exercise. And the next one, I guess, is going to be on awards and policies and such things. And so we'll have to drag Jason out of the chat and see who he wants to bring with him. Early in April, we'll be doing the first quarterly Poda stats, news and stats update. We moved those from monthly to quarterly because the Support Your Parks weekends are quarterly, and it just seems to help keep things consistent. So with that, I'll say my 73, and thank you very much. And we'll catch you all around a water cooler.
Yeah, thank you.